It was late. Late enough that most of the party had thinned out. The lights were low, music softer, staff starting to collect empty glasses. A private rooftop, invite only, no press, no footage, a safe zone, until it wasn't. A rumor started with a single message. Did anyone else see Jungkook and Taehyung leave with 2 girls? No tag, no timestamp, just a question. But the timeline cracked open instantly. Someone else replied, then another, then a third account posted. They didn't sneak out. That's what made it weird. What followed wasn't proof. It was observation. Descriptions that all aligned. 2 members of BTS, 2 girls, 1 exit, no rush. They left through the main elevator, not the service stairwell, not the underground garage. And that's what fans couldn't make sense of, because everyone knows how this works. You don't walk out of a party like that. Not in this city, not at that hour, not when eyes are still open. And the girls? They weren't recognizable. Not influencers, not stylists, not anyone could place. One person posted from a locked account. They looked normal, not dressed for cameras, not the type you'd expect to see leaving with them. That phrasing, with them, set off everything, because no one knew what it meant. Were they friends, acquaintances, just leaving at the same time? But the damage was already done, because when it comes to BTS, proximity is never neutral, especially not in a space where fans believed everything was under control. And the most haunting part wasn't the girls. It was the fact that they didn't look surprised to be seen, not embarrassed, not rushed, just walking. Like it didn't matter anymore. Like the moment wasn't a moment at all. And that's when the theory started. Because nothing is more dangerous than a silence this visible. By the next day, it wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a shape. No photos, no video. Just overlapping fragments from people who had been close enough. Each piece slightly different, but all describing the same unease. Taehyung in a black shirt, one hand in his pocket, walking half a step ahead. Jungkook quieter, hoodie up, barely looking sideways. 2 girls, not clinging, not hiding, just present. They didn't speak, they didn't laugh, they just moved, together, in the same direction, toward the elevator, and then into the darkened street below. And that's what wouldn't leave people's minds, the lack of performance. Because if it had been a slip, they would have rushed. If it had been a date, they would have hidden. If it had been nothing, they wouldn't have left at the same time. But this wasn't a scene. It was a shape that resisted explanation. And so, the fandom did what it always does in the absence of clarity. It filled the silence with theories. They're stylists. They're part of the event team. It's a misunderstanding, just a shared car. But even the people saying it didn't sound convinced, because something in the timing made it hard to swallow. The event was winding down. Most of the other guests had already left. And BTS doesn't leave last. Not unless they want to avoid attention. Not unless they think no one's watching. But someone always is. One guest described it like this. They didn't walk out fast. They walked out like people who weren't supposed to be noticed, but also weren't afraid if they were. That ambiguity, that quiet confidence, was worse than any proof. Because now, fans weren't asking if something happened. They were asking why it was allowed to look like something happened. Why it wasn't better controlled. Why they didn't leave separately. Why they didn't protect the distance, the invisible space between idol and stranger, that fans have always tried so hard to respect. And slowly, the anxiety shifted from the girls to the choice. Not who were they, but why didn't he walk out alone? Why did they let that silence follow them into the night? By the 3rd night, the story had twisted itself into a dozen versions. Not because new information had appeared, but because too many people thought they saw something different. Some claimed it was Jungkook and Taehyung. Others insisted Yoongi was there too, walking behind them. A few said only one girl actually left with them. The other peeled off just before the car arrived. One post swore it wasn't with at all, that they just happened to exit at the same time. But even in disagreement, one thing was clear. They were seen together. Late, near the side entrance, under soft yellow streetlight, in a silence that felt too composed to be random. And that's what turned speculation into dissonance. Because no matter how you framed it, no matter who you thought the girls were, how you justified the exit, or which member you swore was present, it didn't fit the pattern. Not for that kind of night. Not at that kind of event. Not when fans had come to expect a choreography of distance, a delicate, practiced dance between privacy and presence. But this was neither hidden nor acknowledged. No masks, No handlers, no effort to separate paths. Just four silhouettes moving through a space that was supposed to close behind them. And it was the fans, not the press, who couldn't let go. Some scrambled for context. Maybe they were all headed to the same after-party. Maybe it was a misread angle. Maybe this is exactly what happens when they try to act normal. Others spiraled. So we're just supposed to watch them leave with two girls and pretend it didn't happen? They know what this looks like. Why would they risk it? Why now? Why like this? And a few, the quiet ones, said nothing at all. Just logged off, muted tags, turned off notifications. Because it wasn't about scandal. It was about the breach. The moment the edge blurred too far, and the narrative fans were holding slipped out of their hands. It wasn't confirmation. It wasn't denial. It was something worse. A shape with no caption. A shadow with no explanation. A moment that looked like everything they never expected, and couldn't unsee. By now, every possible angle had been dissected. From who held the door open, to who pressed the elevator button, to whether the girls walked ahead or followed behind. No footage had leaked. No names were dropped. And yet, the entire fandom moved like something had. Because this wasn't about faces. It was about the choreography that didn't happen. One post summed it up perfectly. It wasn't messy. That's what made it worse. Because chaos is easy to deny. But this wasn't chaos. This was quiet. This was structure. This was intention without explanation. Jungkook didn't run. Taehyung didn't smile. No one turned away or tried to cover their face. They just walked, like people who had made a choice. And the fandom didn't know what to do with that. For years, fans had offered grace. They're human. They deserve privacy. Let them breathe. But this wasn't breathing. This was stepping out while being watched. In a moment that wasn't chaotic enough to ignore, and wasn't clear enough to understand. And that ambiguity? It split people. Some insisted it was overblown. We're projecting. Let it go. There's no proof they were together. It's just unfortunate timing. But others refused to let it rest. They know how people see them. You don't exit a party with two girls at 2 a.m. and expect silence. This wasn't carelessness. This was indifference. Theories bloomed like weeds. One claimed it was a setup, a distraction to protect something bigger. Another argued it was a test, to see how fans would react without confirmation. A third simply wrote, I don't think they care what we think anymore. That line echoed, because it wasn't angry, it wasn't hurt, it was quiet, tired. Not because of the girls, not because of the night, but because of the absence of correction. No one stepped forward to clean the mess. Not the label, not the managers, not even the usual silence that feels like protection. Instead, there was just nothing. And in that nothing, too many people saw something they couldn't unsee. A choice to be visible, just long enough to fracture the trust that kept them unseen. By the fifth day, the image had stopped shifting. There were no new details, no footage, no confirmation, just stillness, and the quiet certainty that whatever happened, they didn't try to undo it. The fandom didn't fall apart. It just got quieter, subdued. Not in rage, not in grief, in something stranger, displacement. Because fans weren't mourning an illusion. They were questioning a contract, the unwritten agreement that said, we don't cross into your world, and you don't blur the edges of ours. But that night, in that one moment, at that late hour, the edges weren't blurred. They were walked through. Not violently, not carelessly, but plainly. Two members, two girls, one exit, no shields, no distractions, no second glance back. And the fans who had spent years explaining, defending, protecting, found themselves staring at a moment that didn't ask for protection. It asked to be left alone. And that's what no one knew how to do. Because when you build a story around distance, what do you do when the people at the center stop maintaining it? One fan wrote, in a locked thread that spread faster than anything else that week, they didn't confirm anything, but they didn't prevent anything either. And maybe that's worse. That sentence stayed, pinned in minds, echoed under posts, because what happened wasn't betrayal. It wasn't disrespect. It was permission. They permitted the speculation. They permitted the ambiguity. They permitted the exit, in full view, without explanation. And in doing so, they didn't burn the bridge. They just let it bend. Quietly, slightly, irreversibly. And for the first time in years, the fans weren't asking, what did it mean? They were asking, was it ever meant to mean something to us at all? And no one answered, because that too was permitted. because silence, when intentional, is louder than denial, and because they left and never closed the door behind them.